There it goes. Uh, Director Albers is sitting right here. Mr. Engel,
Here.
Director Larson,
Here.
Director Lindner,
Here.
Director Ottoman.
Here.
No.
She's talking, so.
Online.
No, apparently not. Director Sutton,
Here.
Director Tesfayesus,
Absent.
Director Vanderbosch,
Here.
Director Yemeneon,
Here.
ex officio Director Zane Penny.
Absent.
In Germany. All right, thank you. We have a quorum. This special meeting is being convened for the purpose of interviewing candidate for the position of executive director. We have with us our current assistant principal, Catherine Radicke. To begin this interview process, we will have a presentation by assistant principal Radicke. And to remind everybody, we had a homework assignment for our candidates, whereas the scenario is as follows. You are the incoming executive director of the Twin Cities German Immersion School. Enrollment has been flat for the past 2 years with ongoing efforts in both retention and recruitment. Current enrollment is approximately 5% below where it was 4 years ago. A new immersion competitor program is opening nearby, not reality, but an assumption for this assignment. Despite these challenges, the board has set a goal to increase total enrollment by 5% over the next 3 years. The task is to prepare and deliver a 15-minute presentation to the board outlining your plan to achieve this goal, and you may take any reasonable assumption where needed. With that, I'm handing it over to Catherine Radicke to enlighten us.
While he's pulling that up.
Okay, it's too much.
Yeah, that's my presentation. Okay. You'll have to click through for me if that's okay.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Great. So tonight, I'm here to present to you my plan for growing enrollment at TCGIS. And there are 3 main priority areas that I will touch on, and that is retainment, recruitment, and differentiation, with the ultimate goal of increasing our enrollment by 5% within the next 3 years. To give us some context, it was already shared briefly by Director Lindner. Our current enrollment is standing at about 540 students in grades K-8, which happens to be about 5% below what we were 4 years ago. Our goal is to increase by 5% in 3 years, which means about 30 students more for TCGIS. So that means we're at about 570 students within the next 3 years. You can go to the next slide, Emily. Framing our conversation, I think it's important to look back at our mission, vision, and values, which also were already presented this evening. Our TCGIS mission is innovative education of the whole child through German immersion. And so when we talk about a plan for improvement, for increasing enrollment, it's important to keep our mission, vision, and values front and center that will help us drive our work forward. What will drive our enrollment? It's important to look at the data we already have. We know that at our school community, the majority of our students and families hear about us through word of mouth. We've learned at an intake survey this fall from about 70 families that 50% of them enrolled for our immersion programming, and about 25% enrolled because of our values and our school community. So what that means for us as far as a plan moving forward over the next 3 years is that we need to activate our family advocates, activate our current families in our community, make our German immersion programming and outcomes more visible to our community, and then also tell our story. Make it so it's a clear pathway of a K-12 education, and it doesn't just end in 8th grade. Talking briefly about the assumptions, again, we're at about 540 students. We're looking to increase that by about 30 students in 3 years. Our current available capacity lies primarily in grades K2 and then 4-6, so that transition period to middle school. The kindergarten group is an important group because that is our filter into our whole school. So looking for ways to increase that number for enrollment is going to be really critical. Thank you. All right, what's our strategy? How are we going to grow enrollment? Again, I said there are 3 priorities or focus areas for this plan. And these priorities need to happen through our whole family experience and through what our students are experiencing at TCGIS. The first priority is retain. How are we going to keep students in our building? How are we going to keep families satisfied and happy and coming back year after year? We know charter schools is when you sign up for a charter school, there's an inherent choice that comes with that, which means families can choose to leave too. There's already a working effort on that family to choose an education for their child, and we want them to keep choosing our school through 8th grade. The second focus area would be recruit. How are we going to get more students in the door? Again, primarily looking at that kindergarten pipeline, but in our other grades as well. And then finally, differentiate. How are we going to make our programming stand out, especially in comparison to other immersion programs that might be coming in the neighborhood? We have just gone through a very long process to create our strategic plan, and so it's important to bring the strategic plan into the conversation. Enrollment is not a separate initiative. It's going to be what keeps our doors open and what keeps us operating. Our 2 big statements for the strategic plan were gemeinsam lernen and gemeinsam wachsen. We want to show our families the future that their children have and how we're going to get to that together. So thriving together. Thanks, Emily. All right, our first priority would be to retain the families we have. The families that stay at TCGIS can also be used to recruit. Again, bringing in that the important aspect of how families learn about our school is through word of mouth. The actions that we need to prepare for to retain more students are continuing to focus on the whole child approach. So how our students feel at school, if they feel a sense of belonging, if they feel included, and if families feel a sense of belonging and if they feel included. This year I started a lunch and learn for literacy that was pretty well received. We actually did a lunch and a dinner. I'd like to see more lunch and learn opportunities for our families that make them feel more connected to school. That could be updates on strategic plan. It could also be focus areas such as transition to middle school or what to expect in 8th grade in preparation for 9th grade. The opportunities are pretty wide, but bringing in some of those lunch and learn opportunities. We're also going to retain more students when we can show their academic growth and successes. Closely attached to that are our standardized test scores. It's important to be looking at our student achievement data, especially compared to neighboring schools and neighboring districts, and how we can make ourselves stand apart. And then yep, that's fine. Nope, you're good. You're good. You can go to the next one. The final point on that slide was that retaining just 10 students a year is going to take an enormous pressure off of the recruitment. And so we really want to focus on retaining the families we have and also recruiting new families. You can go to the next one. I'm trying to keep my eye on the clock, so I don't want to take too long here. So the second part after that, let's keep the families we have, make sure the families feel supported and see the value in staying at TCGIS. The second part in that is recruiting new families. So three areas that I see opportunities in. The first is outreach and visibility. I think we have an opportunity to connect more with pre-Ks and preschools in the St. Paul and Twin Cities area. I think we can do more with our partnership at the Kinderstube, St. Paul, that's a German immersion pre-K program. They do not have the Minneapolis program anymore. And so we've got only that one to connect with. And I think there's an opportunity there. I was a part of some of the tabling events we did this year. And I also, while I was there, was seeing what other schools are doing for their tabling events, and they're collecting information on site. I think as simple as name and email, maybe a phone number, something that gives us a contact information for people who visit our tables so that we can start the recruiting immediately after those events. I also see an opportunity to do more with our marketing, primarily our increase in social media. Right now, there is a TCGIS Instagram, for example. There also is one for TCGIS Athletics. I think there's also one right now happening for the eighth graders on their Gap Exchange, and I think they all need to be filtered through one account, one TCGIS account that shows not just athletics, not just our eighth grade chip, but really shows the whole pathway of what's happening in and around our school in the K-8 grades. I also think we can do more with the swag. The little students running around the neighborhood and in the community are great marketers when they're wearing their t-shirts. So having them for sale, figuring out a way to incorporate that to be more visible in the community. And then finally, another bucket I think is the tours and open houses that we have. We have done a number of tours. Thank you to Nicole Krashell for leading those that are within the school day and in the afternoon as well. I would reevaluate the timing of our school tours. For example, we're missing the opportunity to showcase our Morgenkreis. That's a really great sense of a time to see a sense of community within our school and in the classes. It's a great time to see German language. It's a great time to see how students are interacting with each other. And then it's taking away some of that busyness in the hallways that we see during the lunchtime tours. We also had great feedback having student voices at the middle school night tour, and I think we can bring that into our tours regularly as well. Yeah, you can go on to the next one. Okay. The final priority is to differentiate ourselves against other immersion programs. So other immersion programs can offer a language, but they cannot replicate our deep community. They cannot replicate that we've been here for 20 years. They cannot replicate our strong family network that we have and our pathway, a K-12 pathway for German immersion. And I think that's what makes us unique. Some actions for us as far as our strategy is that we need to make visible and show that K-12 pathway. Can you go to the next slide, actually? This is showing our partnership with St. Paul Public Schools at German Immersion School. We have in grades 3, 6, and 8 language proficiency exams, but their experience doesn't end there. They have an opportunity to continue their German language into the high school in grades 10, 11, and 12. They have the opportunity to take the bilingual SEALS test and as well as the DEA States FI. This year, our juniors took the DEA States FI, and I believe it was between 80 and 90% passed, with a high majority of our students passing at the C1 level, which if you go back one, Yeah. The C1 level is an advanced German speaker. And so that their data is our data at TCGIS. We want to highlight that. We want to show that is our students' pathway. And you can go to the next one. Great. Finally, how are we going to measure the success of this plan? We will use some metrics such as looking at how many families are enrolling for school tours. We will look at the number of applications. We want to see an increase in the number of applications to our school, primarily kindergarten, but the open grades as well. We want to see a decrease in the mid-year student withdrawals. That's going to tell us that we are retaining students. They are feeling like TCGIS is a place for them, and we want to keep them here. And then an increase in our social media engagement will also be another metric to use to measure if our plan is moving in the direction we want it to. Thanks. Another visual here for us to look at when we're talking about enrollment is this conversion funnel from how we go from attracting families, how we go from the word of mouth into actually getting students in our doors and to show up on the first day of school. So on the right-hand side of that chart is a number of different tools that we can use as a school when we are at each different stage of that funnel, trying to ultimately get more students in our building on the first day of school. And I think that's the last slide. Thank you, Director Albers.
Great. Thank you very much, Catherine. What questions?
Oh, do you want your mic on?
My mic is on.
Okay.
Keep yours on when you answer. What question does the board have for Catherine?
I have a question. You mentioned in your strategies for retaining families that are here, increasing feelings of belonging, engagement, and inclusion. I was just wondering if you have specific strategies or ideas to help build on that at TCGS, to help those kids, like you also mentioned mid-year withdrawals, to help maybe those kids support them so maybe they don't feel like they need to make that choice.
Thank you. That's a good question. I think the first thing to look at when a student withdraws is why, but it also shouldn't be a surprise to us when we see a student withdraw from our school. And so in my mind, when we are as a community, whether it's teachers at a conference or if it's in word of mouth, if it's talking to a student or a family, that something doesn't feel right, I would want to streamline a process so that information is brought to administrators so we can start problem solving with that family and figuring out what is not feeling like a good fit or a good match for our school for that specific student. To answer your question more specifically about how are we going to work on them feeling like a sense of belonging and inclusion in our school, the work I have started some of that work already here at TCGIS with the Student Belonging Survey. That's now K-8. We started doing that in middle school, and now we've extended that to the elementary school. And so really trying to find, both information for individual grade levels and in the elementary individual teachers because they get that immediate feedback in the survey, but also trying to find some trends across the elementary school, some trends across the middle school and across K-8 will help us to really dig into what we need to work on as a staff, how we need to develop ourselves professionally to be able to maybe address some of the needs that are coming up in the Student Belonging Survey more head on. Mm-hmm.
I have a couple questions.
One was just while you were speaking, Catherine, you mentioned the Student Belonging Survey. Do we do anything in terms of surveying families for how they think their student is doing or how happy they are with the school on any kind of repetitive basis throughout the K through 8 experience?
I'm just unmuting myself. That's a great question. I believe there's a family engagement survey that has been started, and that does ask questions to families about how they believe their student feels at school and is experiencing school. Do they feel supported? Do they feel challenged? Things like that. So yes, that survey already does exist. But we can survey our families and our students until we're blue in the face. It really matters what we do with that data next. And so I would like to really try to find some trends and really try to kind of pick apart that data to make actionable steps for us as a school to help and support those families and students. Mhm.
And the other question I had initially was, you had talked about one of the strategies or focuses being recruitment and increasing outreach and visibility through connecting with preschools and the Kinderstube.
Mhm.
And I wondered if you had any specific thoughts on ways to accomplish that.
I would like to have established relationships with some pre-Ks and preschools in the area. I know some already do tabling events for families for kindergarten. And I know we show up to some of those, but I think we can do more. I think we can invite some of those preschool programs to a play date at our school. I think we can have certain, special events that we are inviting those programs in the preschools too, so they know we exist. Again, that's a visibility piece. You and I might know because we heard about it from a friend, but someone who maybe has never heard of our school, or I didn't know there was even a German immersion school. I don't want it to be a question. If you live in St. Paul, Minneapolis too, you should know that there is a German immersion school because we've been here for 20 years. So, yeah.
There's a request to turn your camera on. If you're interested.
Me?
No, okay, no.
Okay.
I have a question, Catherine. On your recruitment slide, you mentioned addressing where our openings are. I think you said something from K to second grade, and then I think it was fourth through sixth. We have a unique challenge as an immersion school that maybe regular charters don't have, where we have kind of a barrier to entry due to the language proficiency on those middle grades. Any ideas on how we can address that so that we can alleviate the concerns parents may have about bringing a kid in fourth, fifth, or sixth grade?
I think that's a great question, and you're right, it is a challenge to help support in those different, especially the later grades, to access our school and our curriculum in a positive, and have it be still a positive way. I do have an idea, and I think it would be absolutely a collaborative conversation and teamwork to figure out how this would be possible. But this idea came from another charter school. Actually, we were on a call for the READ Act, so the Minnesota READ Act, and this charter school shared that for their middle and high school grades that they have leveled, in this case, it was leveled Spanish. So they have mixed grades, but based on level. And I know a lot of students would benefit from that. Even students who have been here K4, who maybe are slower to take up the German language, might be still in that beginning or beginner category in class. But again, that's a whole programming conversation that I think one person can't decide. But I think that would be a path forward for saying, yes, we actually have German 1, 2, and 3. And we would see where your child fits in. It would also help answer the question that we sometimes get from teachers about well, why is this kid even here in seventh grade? They've never had German class before. Well, we want all students to join our school, and we have a responsibility to teach them. And so I think it would take some of the pressure off the middle school teaching teams as well, if there are classes based on German language proficiency.
Thank
Mhm.
You mentioned decreasing the mid-year student withdrawal. How would you plan on achieving that, given that sometimes we don't have a choice because parents move wherever? Or do you have any information based on the surveys that would suggest having a quote unquote better belonging with our school would decrease that?
I think I'm understanding the question correctly. I would say more than half of the students who enrolled mid-year this year did not leave our school because they were moving away. So while that sometimes is a family situation that's out of our control, and I think those we need to just put into this category of outside of our realm of control. But what is more important to me is the third graders who leave because they don't have friends, or they feel like their teacher's not listening to them. They don't feel a sense of community. Maybe they started late and now they're thinking, oh, maybe this isn't the best fit. And so is your question more about how to find those students or how to approach those situations? I want to make sure I answer your question.
Well, my question is more around if we understand fully the reason people are leaving, and if how much can we actually do to change that?
I think we probably could ask more targeted questions for our exit interview or exit survey when students or families, I'll say families because we lose a whole family when a student withdraws. When they withdraw, I think we could ask more targeted questions. I would also be interested myself as an executive director speaking one-on-one with that family. In person would be ideal. Even if they've already made the decision to leave, I want to know why. Is there something we could have done differently? What did we miss along the way? And I think that information is not just to live with an executive director, but it needs to be shared with our teaching staff and our community, because ultimately all of us have a role in the responsibility of keeping, retaining, and making sure our kids feel supported.
Yeah, I have one question, and that is, I know that you're really close to the source material in this homework exercise. But part of the exercise was you're free to make any assumptions that you were reasonable.
Mhm.
Were there any assumptions you made in preparing this that was divergent from reality?
I don't think it was. And I also tried to be very cognizant of, having an inside scoop into our data. And all the information that I have is open to the public too, can be easily found on our website, especially the strategic plan. So yes, I'm aware that maybe I have a little bit more knowledge.
Assumptions.
I didn't make any other assumptions. I think we've got a pretty good, what should I say, challenge to work through a strategy on enough as it is.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions from the directors?
I think it's interest of time and good.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Catherine. We appreciate your effort you put into this. Definitely will help out one way or the other. For those listening online, if you want to see us, you just need to pin Twin Cities German Immersion to our Zoom, so you have us as a video versus other people. We now move into the interview questions we have for you. You ready?
Sure.
And we start with Director Yamenia.
Thank you, Director. Considering other charter school options, what specifically draws you to leading TCGIS at this point in your career? And what do you believe makes TCGIS a particularly strong fit for your leadership skills and values?
I have been around this community for quite some time, over 12 years. It's kind of scary to say that out loud. And I feel a deep care and commitment for TCGIS. I think I shared in my first interview with the hiring committee that the decision to apply for this position was not a quick decision and one that I knew right off the bat that I wanted to do. And in a lot of reflection and thinking about the future of TCGIS, I really felt deeply that I have something to give to a school. And I would love for that to be TCGIS because I want to see our school still continue to grow and thrive and be an opportunity for students K-8 while we have them and then beyond to learn German language and to have this very special, unique German immersion experience that they wouldn't find anywhere else, really.
What specifically are you interested in when it comes to the executive director position? And how that plays out in what you just said?
That's a great question. Like, why am I not content just being the assistant principal? I think for me, I am, well, first of all, I do not shy away from challenge. It's part of who I am, part of my personality. I also am excited by not just leading in a school or not just leading the academic side of a school, but really our whole system. And I have learned a lot about TCGIS the past 3 years while I've been on staff that make me think, yep, things are going really well in some areas. We do a lot of things really well, and there are still some areas of opportunity and growth, and I see myself rising to the challenge to address some of those. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to move on with the next
Okay.
question. In your first 90 days as executive director of TCGIS, how would you balance listening and relationship building with the pressure to demonstrate leadership quickly? Walk us through your priorities, who you would spend time with first, and what you would intentionally avoid doing to her.
I think, as referenced kind of in the last question, because I have been around the school, I have a lot of knowledge already. I think there is a shorter on-ramp to me taking the executive director job than maybe someone who is not already aware of our community and our school. Having said that, I think it's important in the first 30 days, I'll kind of break it down. The first 30 days, I would say I would want to kind of reset myself and my position at TCGIS. A lot of people know me, maybe even still as the dean of students, probably as the assistant principal, but I would really want to reestablish my role in our school and community. And I would want to take time to listen to teachers and staff. I would want to take time to listen to families and make myself available. I know a lot of the families in our community, but I don't know all of them. And that's a great time to make connections. On the back to school night, I would want to meet as many families as I can. I can see an opportunity to have an opportunity to have a meet the new executive director night that's kind of attached to the back to school night, just to make myself visible in our community. That would be the focus of the first kind of 30 days. the 30 to 60 days, I would say, is a lot of work on our strategic plan alignment and making sure that what is set in the strategic plan is still in alignment with the board and with the metrics that we want to measure. And it might be reevaluating some things on the strategic plan. It might be just realigning the board and the academic team or operational team. And then that last kind of 60 to 90 days, I see as beginning to do more executing of the strategic plan. I think we have great stuff on paper. There was a ton of work by many people at the whole process of creating our strategic plan, and I would like to see it expanded, where we are identifying who's responsible for which goals, who's responsible for which milestones to which goals, and we're creating some structure as far as how we are monitoring progress toward those goals and making it so our strategic plan is something that we're just living in and it's not just on paper.
Is there anything you would avoid doing?
Thank you. I didn't answer that part of the question. I would avoid making sweeping changes, for sure, at least within the first 90 days. I, you know, there is a lot of stability already at the school. And I would want to take time to learn and reflect about how the staff feels, what my relationship with the board and school board members is like before coming in, and I would want to be really intentional with any changes.
You mentioned at the end of the 90 days executing the strategic plan, I'm paraphrasing. But what would you hope people in the community would say about your leadership?
After 90 days?
Yep.
I hope that families in the community and the school board after 90 days would see me as a grounding presence for our school. I would hope that they see someone who is very committed to our mission and very committed to creating structures and systems to keep moving our school forward, and somebody who's visible and available. I can also imagine after 90 days, or maybe closer to 100, 120 days, doing with the board some type of state of our school, where we are, where are we at, how are things feeling, and again, having an opportunity to do a check-in with the community.
Okay, thank you.
Language immersion schools can create unique barriers for access, belonging, and confidence for some students and families. In your experience, which students and families are most at risk of feeling excluded or unsuccessful in schools like ours? And what specific steps would you suggest taking to address that?
I think families that would feel maybe less welcome or might have a harder time adapting to our community would be, as you kind of mentioned before, some middle school families who maybe started at our school later and didn't get the K-4 experience that some of our other families got. I think that's a vulnerable situation because there's a reason they chose our school. I don't know what the student's history was at their other school, but really trying to create a good space for them to access German, to learn German, and also just feel integrated with kids who've already been at our school, K-4. It's hard. It's hard to integrate sometimes. One thing, feedback that I got, I think it was the first year I was here as Dean of Students, a parent came into my office on the first day of school. And her child, I think, was fifth or sixth grade, and she was so lost. She said her son was so lost. They didn't know where to go, what to do, who to talk to, what school supplies to bring where. And I really felt for her because I I think we dropped the ball. We missed helping that transition to our school. Um, so using that the following year, we started doing a middle school buddy for new students, and that's something that we continued this year as well. We partner any middle school student that is joining us from a different school with a current middle schooler, and then they meet at back to school night. They kind of spend the first few days at TCGIS together, walking through passing time. And that I think has been one step forward. I think I would take that another step further and work on integrating the family a little bit more, not just the student and the student buddy, but helping the family integrate more into our school community. I would say the other group of students who might struggle with belonging at our school are students on IEPs, who maybe are having a hard time accessing the German language. And I think addressing that, what comes to mind right away, staffing for special education teachers can be tricky. Getting special education teachers that speak German is a gem. And I think we want to look to how we can do that more so that our students on IEPs who maybe are getting specialized instruction are also and still getting the German language.
Any follow-up questions from the board?
Can you tell us about a time when feedback from students or families changed your thinking about how you approached student belonging or a concept you already had in place?
I think the example that I gave from the parent, again, I was kind of new to the school, so I was still figuring everything out along with this parent, but I think that definitely changed my thinking of, oh, we missed something, we need to do something a little differently. I would say we haven't perfected that. I have a call in 2 weeks with a parent whose child started our school this year in fifth grade. And she wants to give me feedback on how the first 6, 7, almost the whole school year has gone for her child. And I don't know what her feedback will be. I don't know what the child's feedback will be at that time. But I will definitely use their experience when we're talking about how we work to support the incoming families.
All right, our next question is on family engagement. Family engagement can mean very different things in different communities. What does meaningful family partnership look like for you in practice? And how have you intentionally built trust across families with different expectations and backgrounds?
Building trust with families, I believe, doesn't happen overnight. I think trust is built in small interactions and in small moments over time. I I feel 3 years in to being a staff member at TCGS, I feel that I do have relationships with most of our families. To me, that feels really positive because it makes it when a hard conversation is coming, it makes that a little easier when I already have a relationship built with a family. Can you restate the question? I want to make sure I am answering all of it.
What does meaningful family partnership look like for you in practice? And how have you intentionally built trust across families with different expectations and backgrounds?
Okay, I think I'm answering it. Yeah, meaningful family engagement to me looks like being visible. It looks like being available. And when I have parents on the phone in my office, I really try to empathize with them as a parent. And I think that that's an important hat to wear because at the end of the day, we're talking about their child, and this is probably one of the most important things in their life. And so when we're talking about how to support their child, or that maybe their child's not feeling supported by a specific teacher, maybe the parent comes with anger or a lot of passion for a specific reason, I really try to empathize with that, knowing that their relationship and with their child is really important to them. And I want it to be important to me too, and I want them to know that. So all that to say, building positive relationships with families, I think is a strong priority.
Any follow-up questions from the board? No? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, great. Executive directors regularly face difficult financial decisions that impact people, programs, and long-term sustainability. Can you tell us about a financially difficult or unpopular decision you had to help lead? How did you approach it? What factors did you weigh? And how did you communicate it to your board or supervisor and school community?
I have not been at the executive level making a financial decision that would affect a whole entire school. I can share an example of something that came up when I was at a different school around budget and kind of enrollment. They were kind of tied together. We had a projected budget for the upcoming year. We got it in about February for the upcoming year. Showed a significant amount of attrition, maybe 7%. And we were given about 3.5 third grade teachers. You can't really have half a teacher. And so there was I would say a quick solution and then maybe a longer term problem solving that had to be done. The quick solution was that we had to have a split class. So the second and third grade had to be combined. This was a programming decision, so it was a direct effect on the budget, from the budget onto our programming. And we, as an instructional team, came together and first we talked about which grade levels should do the split. So that was kind of the first team conversation, weighing pros and cons of different grade levels, getting a little bit into the details of like who would also be running the split class, which types of kids would be in a split class, should it be a high level and a low level, should it be, so there was a lot of conversations as a team. And that's difficult information to share to a teacher who has to teach a split class for the very first time. And it can be difficult information to share to parents of the students who might be getting now a different experience than you maybe would have imagined them having. So that took some intentional communication with those families. We made phone calls and talked to the families through what it was going to look like for their child, knowing that it was going to be a different classroom experience than they were used to.
How did you, in working with those families?
Mm-hmm.
How did you frame that communication to get them excited potentially about or at least satisfied with the change?
I think taking it one step back and making sure that families are aware of our financial situation or our budget, in this case, our budgetary restrictions, was the first, like the step 0, so that it wasn't a surprise. So those types of conversations are happening at maybe the site council. This, we at TCGIS have everything under one roof, but this wasn't the case. And so making sure parents are informed of what something might look like for the future so that it's while a difficult decision had to be made, they understand the reason why behind it a little bit.
A little bit of a follow-on. What financial indicators do you think charter school board members need to understand well? And how do you ensure that they have a firm grip on understanding the monthly financials provided by the finance team?
I think one of the biggest things to look at for financial indicator is our enrollment, our average daily membership of students, and how that compares to maybe the budget that we have budgeted for, or the enrollment that we have budgeted for. And if there are changes that, if there is an increase in or a decrease in students, an increase in students who have withdrawn, that would highly impact our ADM. So I think that's really important. I think if there's any grant updates or any financial risks that need to be brought up to the board, that should also happen on a monthly basis. And then making sure that we're covering all of our bond requirements so that we are still showing that we are in a healthy position as a school.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions from the board? All right, thank you. Next question. Immersion education is a core tenet of our school. What distinguishes a strong immersion program from one that falls short operationally, instructionally, and culturally?
A strong immersion program is going to have a high level of language proficiency. I think that's the first thing, that there is a high amount of the target language spoken. I think there needs to be a level of family engagement in strong programming, that we are all working together towards supporting our students in this immersion setting. I would also say that there is a need for strong leadership as far as being aligned in our immersion concept and how we talk about immersion and how we support teachers in teaching an immersion setting. And I think all of those combined would set a strong immersion program apart from one that's not feeling very strong.
How would you go about the instructional differences? So, academic instruction between
Can you restate that?
Sure. So looking at a well-established, high-functioning immersion program versus a dysfunctional, how would you distinguish how instruction is given in those programs? Or what would make a high-functioning
academic program?
Yeah.
Again, I would say the levels of language proficiency. I would also look at other data or other indicators of student success. So not just academics, but academics. So how we're doing on the MCA, our standardized test. I would look at how we are doing on our student belonging survey, how students are feeling. I think knowing our mission, we have a balance of the German immersion and the whole child. And so it can't only be our German proficiency. It can't only be the data of our math MCAs. I think we have to look at, and we do a really good job of looking at our students as whole beings and people. And so I would want to see all of those metrics increased.
Can I redirect a little bit?
Sure.
So you talked about ways we know that we have a strong immersion program, that we have a high level of language proficiency. For example, you talked about maybe 80% of our students going on to complete the DSD5 at a high school level.
Mhm.
So that would tell us we're doing well. What do we need to do instructionally to make that happen as an immersion school? What is it that we do that gets us those results?
Great question. I believe we need to take our immersion concept that's on paper and make it living. So what I mean by that is if we are saying in kindergarten and first grade, we have 100% of our language instruction in German, then we need to have some fidelity around that. And that's an opportunity for us. We have an opportunity to do more accountability and fidelity around how we're speaking German with our students, how we're instructing in German with our students. We have a lovingly complicated relationship with the Minnesota Read Act because we have, which is how the state wants us to view literacy, and we have to uphold both of these things. We have to uphold the English literacy and how we're assessing our students in English literacy. And because we're an immersion program, we have to do the same for German. And so there is a huge amount of work towards making our students biliterate. The state wants us to uphold that and continue to do that. And we have a responsibility to do that too. Does that directly enough answer your question? I mean, we could talk for another hour, but okay.
All right, thank you. Your turn.
Our staff here at TCGIS includes educators from different countries, with different professional traditions, communication styles, and expectations around authority and feedback. Tell us about a time you led across meaningful cultural and professional differences, and what tensions or misunderstandings might have emerged, and how did you navigate them?
So it was a long question.
Given that we have staff from different countries and backgrounds, tell us about a time you led a group, a community across that crossed cultural and professional differences, and what tensions or misunderstandings might have emerged, and how you navigated them.
I can give an example from my time here with working with an international staff. I think the first part is just acknowledging that we all come from different backgrounds. Some of our staff come from Germany and Austria. Some come from a different state or a different district. Maybe some have a large public school district and never have been in an immersion setting. So I think first is acknowledging that we do all have different frames of reference. A specific example about how that came to light, I would say, is in following our discipline policy and non-exclusionary discipline, specifically in the state of Minnesota. This is new. This the sense of keeping students in the classroom as much as possible, the sense of inclusion, the sense of giving students support and really getting to the root cause of student behavior has been new for a lot of our international staff, I would say. And there is tension there because there is a direct correlation with classroom management and student discipline, right? So maybe the practice, am I going on a tangent? And stopping.
Non-exclusionary, whatever.
Oh, okay, sure. So non-exclusionary discipline, in short, means that we need to do everything we can to keep students in school before suspending, expelling, kicking them out. They, meaning the state of Minnesota, extends it to even in-school suspension, detention, things like that. Because the reason the state of Minnesota wants us to do as much non-exclusionary discipline as possible is because studies have shown exclusionary discipline is not effective. It is not changing student behavior. So in 2023, there was a new statute that said, if you are a public school in Minnesota, you need to follow non-exclusionary disciplinary practices. Yeah. Okay. Going back in time. I think it has been a source of tension because there is a direct correlation with classroom management and discipline. For example, sending a kid out of your classroom, even that we would consider exclusionary. Because if we say, no, you can't come into the classroom, you've been too disruptive, they're excluded from their education, even if it's just for 20 minutes. And the state of Minnesota says, nope, you can't do that. That legislation came through me to staff. That was not super well received, I would say, at the beginning. And now that we've kind of been in this for a few years, there is greater understanding with time and with training and with putting it into practice that I would say now, for example, our office referrals are have gone way down since 2023. We're giving teachers different tools, how to address behavior, how to de-escalate students. But when you don't come from a school program or an organization or even school training that follows that, it's hard to get behind. Yeah.
Can you share just what's one of the most meaningful ways you've had to get international staff on board with that example, for example? Like that's one of the most meaningful pieces of data or things you say to them as you're trying to help people understand that example or exclusionary behavior practices.
I would say that, for example, I do a training that all staff sit in for. There's, maybe 75% of staff leave and are like, I understood that. I know how to implement it. I'd say the most meaningful follow-up to that is when an individual teacher is actually in the situation of addressing student behavior so I can bring it into the conversation. And it makes it feel more practical, not just something that Catherine's talking about, but this is why we're not sending a kid out. Or, this incident happened, but well, we can't suspend really a kid in second grade. What else can we do? Great, maybe there's missing skills that need to be addressed. Maybe the IEP needs to be readdressed and talked about. There are other things that we want to do besides just saying your kid's excluded from our school for 2 days for throwing a punch. Does that answer the question?
Sure. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any follow-up questions from the directors? Hearing none. Next, please.
Tell us about a time you had to lead through something genuinely hard and unexpected, a crisis, a safety situation, a key staff loss, or a sudden disruptions. What happened? What was your role in getting through it? And what changed in your leadership afterward?
When I was a dean of students, we lost a staff member in the middle of the school year, and that happened very suddenly. My role at the time was in student support. I was also a member of our academic team at that time. My focus first was the students. Working as a team, it was clear who kind of would take what role, and how we manage this as a community. And my focus was the students and the student support. So I got our student support team together. We did a few different things. One thing that we were told by the Max Crisis team was to look for students in distress. And so we kept a Google form of students that we were seeing in distress. We shared that with teachers so teachers could add to that list in that Google form. We also held in the library a open check-in for students to help. And this lasted I think about at least a week in the library for students to come in if they were struggling in the middle of the day, if they needed to take a break. So we staffed that space. We were keeping a log. We were keeping data on who was visiting regularly, things like that. And I would say after that initial first week or 2 weeks, it became clear that some students were struggling more than others. The student support team, again, I brought them together and we talked about other ways to help students through their grief. So one idea became an advisory class period that was specific for students who just needed time with grief. And that was led by someone in the student support team. So that was kind of drop-in hours. And then longer term, we collaborated with an organization and had therapy dogs come visit the school. And that happened a few times a week for several weeks. And we used that data from our spreadsheet, who was the students most at high risk to invite to some of those dog therapy sessions.
And what changed in your leadership afterwards based on that? I know it was a difficult time. I remember that time.
Yeah, thank you. I think I change a lot as a person. I think you do. When you lose someone you're working close with or living close with, whoever and what other way that you are interacting with them, I think it can make you reevaluate a lot of different things. As far as my leadership, I learned, I would say, the importance of self-care. Making sure that while I'm at service to others, I'm also making sure that I'm taking care of myself. And it's sometimes not intuitive or easy when you're an educator, when you are showing up every day in service of other people, to be able to remember to make time for, in this case, my own grief. Yeah.
Healthy governance requires both strong partnership and clear boundaries between the board and executive director. Tell us about a time you navigated significant disagreement, ambiguity, or tension with a board or a supervisor. And how did you approach the situation and what did you learn from
it? I can remember a disagreement not during my time at TCGIS, but when I was on a hiring team and I think we interviewed about 11 candidates for a literacy intervention role. And one candidate happened to be an internal candidate. And there was a disagreement between me and my supervisor of who should get the job, who should be offered the role. And I was the opinion that the external candidate who had a reading license, who was more qualified and would bring more value to our students and our school should be the person selected. And my supervisor disagreed because of the relationship that was already established with the internal candidate. We ultimately decided on the external candidate. With that came some, I would say, a little bit of whiplash as far as a school culture. There's there's a decision made, but it's not without effect of someone you are working with and care a lot about. And the follow-up was actually a check-in with that teacher the next morning, talking to her and making sure that she was okay as a human being, because there is a human side of leadership that's also really important when you're making decisions that impact the people around you. Mhm.
Our mission emphasizes the innovative education of a whole child through family development. How would you bring this mission to life in practice? And how would you identify and build community partnerships that would spread from it?
Will you read that one?
Our mission emphasizes the innovative education of the whole child through family learning. How would you bring that mission to life in practice? And how would you identify and build community partnerships that strengthen it?
I think going back to my presentation where I talked about visibility, I think that's important to be visible in our community. And again, as I mentioned, making sure that people know we exist as a school. So having more swag out in the community, having connections to more preschools, and having invitations to preschools to visit our school for a play date or a community event. I think that's the kind of the partnership and the collaboration piece is first making sure that people know we're here and being able to create relationships with them. And can you restate the first part of that, the question? Or did I answer?
How would you bring that
The mission to life? Okay. Yeah. Our mission of the innovative education of the whole child through German immersion, I think we've got the German immersion and I think we've got the whole child. The innovative part, I think we're still working on. How can we be innovative? What else can we do? Sometimes we're innovative with our budget or our resources. And that's kind of where the innovative part comes in. I think continuing to focus on how students feel, on the student belonging, kind of answers that whole child, how we're addressing the mission of the whole child. That work has started, but I think it can definitely be continued. And experiences too, right? We just started 2 years ago, the Osprey Wilds trip to 4th grade, right? So that's kind of adding on to the student experience and also kind of that innovative education part. So looking for different experiences that we can offer our students, I think also helps our mission.
Can you now focus on identifying community partnerships that in essence strengthen our mission or strengthen the way that we educate?
The German part of our mission, I know we already have an established relationship with the German American Institute, for example, with the Kinderstube. I think we can strengthen those relationships. I see an opportunity to do more with the GAI as far as visibility and with the Kinderstube as well. Like I said, inviting them to our school, inviting them to a play date at the park and getting them in our doors sooner, I think would help with the partnership.
Yeah, any other follow-up question? Yeah, who's next?
I believe it's me. Specialized schools depend heavily on retaining strong educators. What do you believe excellent teachers need most from the school leadership to stay, grow, and do their best, especially in a demanding immersion environment?
teachers need a support, first of all. Teachers need to know that the school leadership has their support and they have their back. I think in our German immersion environment, I think our teachers need to know clearly what we do for German immersion, how we do what we've identified as best practices in our German immersion programming. Sometimes our German teachers come and have never been actually in an immersion school. They have maybe been teaching in Germany, but immersion school is very different. And so being clear on that and offering training when they need training, and having I would say clear professional development for our teachers at kind of hitting those benchmarks and milestones around what strategies we have already identified as what we do at our school. I think all of our teachers need a place to feel like they are valued and their work is visible. So much work goes in that's maybe not seen or brought to light. I think that every teacher likes to be seen in a different way. Some like to be called out at a staff meeting. Some like to be just, sent an email in the middle of the day. So understanding how teachers and how staff want to be seen and appreciated and valued is an important part because it might look a little different for each teacher.
Any other questions from the board? Nope. Okay. Going on to the last question.
Okay.
I started to read. Okay, great. All right. So families today have more educational choices than ever before. What do you believe families are actually choosing when they choose a school like TCGIS? And what strategic risks or opportunities do you see for immersion charter schools over the next 5 years?
Can you read the first part of that again?
Yes.
Thank you.
What do you believe families are actually choosing when they choose a school like TCGIS?
When families choose TCGIS, I think they're making a choice and a commitment to language and to our community. And as we started tonight talking about how a lot of our families join because of word of mouth, I think that's a reason why they might come, but we want them to come and stay. And ideally, they come and stay, and once they see what our students can do, they see the German immersion pathway, they see what their outcomes of their student might be, that's also what helps them to stay at our school. I also mentioned before that enrolling in a charter school is a choice for families. I know that there are significant challenges that charter schools are facing right now. I feel it when I work with Frau Esther Noy when we're looking at our ADSIS grant, for example, the accountability measures and the reporting that has just increased over the last year and will be continuing into next year is a challenge of manpower. We are a small school and we have the same compliance and we have the same expectations that a big public school has that they might have a whole team doing. And I see that as a challenge. I see that as a risk for us as a school because there are increasing pressures from the state and federal level for our school with limited resources, limited funding.
Can you name other kind of strategic risks or opportunities that charter schools and language charter schools might face over the next 5 years?
I wonder if a risk might be fewer families choosing immersion, just given the state of our country. I don't know if that's a risk, but it might be. I can envision that a risk might be a declining enrollment throughout the Twin Cities, and as far as public schools go. Again, if families are choosing our school, they can also choose another school. We aren't a default school to anybody. So a choice and at TCGIS is a very intentional choice on from a family. Other operational risks, I think that we are constantly needing to reevaluate our financial stability as a charter school with increasing teacher salary every year. May or may not be increasing in the funding we get per pupil for our students. That discrepancy is going to get bigger over the next few years.
So conversely, we talked about risk, or you talked about risk. What are, on the brighter side, what are the opportunities for our school?
The opportunities for our school,
or language immersion, I should say.
a language immersion school. I see that the opportunities exist for a language immersion school at our school, TCGIS. I see the opportunities being increasing our students' cultural competency. I see our opportunity in getting our students to a place of academic excellence that puts us back on the map when families are researching best schools in St. Paul, best schools in the Twin Cities area. We have the right people in our building. We have a lot in place already to get us there. We just need to operationalize our teams and get some of that work moving forward to see that. I see that as an exciting opportunity.
Can you expand on that?
More thinking about it from someone who's not an educator, is not as familiar with the school.
And what are some specific things that the school can do or will be doing to operationalize? I think what you're talking about in terms of increasing our test scores.
Yeah. For example, our reading MCA scores are fantastic. We are well above the state average. Our students outperform several other school districts in reading for our students in grades 5, 8, 6, 8, 5, 8 for sure. Our math story is not so optimistic. We are struggling in our grades 3 through 6 at getting our students to be well above the state standard. So we are above it, but not by much. We're hovering at about 50-ish% in average of our grades. When we as a team get our MCA scores, we're able to see by grade what those percentages look like. For example, we have preliminary data, and our 5th grade math this year has tanked. And so we get to figure out what the root cause of that was. We will come together. We have already come together as a team to start working through some of that by really digging down to the root cause, and a lot of it is alignment. And so our work looking forward looks like making sure we have curriculum alignment, making sure that our German math curriculum is in alignment with our state standards for mathematics. There might be a discrepancy there that needs to be addressed. And next school year, we do a math curriculum review. And that's going to be a big part of the conversation as well.
Thank you.
Right. Any follow-up questions from the board? Hearing none, that concludes the questions that we have prepared. We will now give the floor to you to ask us questions.
Sure, I have a few questions. I guess my first question, in the plan I presented over an hour ago, if you can think back to that plan from your perspective, where would you see the biggest risk in that plan?
I can start.
Sure. Go ahead.
I continue to see a risk in recruitment. The reason is, and I think you answered it in one of your responses to one of the questions, is we have capable students because you see it in the German proficiency tests, they do well. But math specifically is a challenge, and reading can probably be better. And I believe those two scores are the biggest marketers we could get for our school. And until we get those up, I believe that we'll continue to struggle to recruit and get the long waiting lists we used to have 10 years ago. And so it's not a risk with your plan per se of what you were talking about, but I think that's the biggest risk that I would see that continues for growing our school or even retaining the students.
Another risk I would see is funding for all the initiatives or having the bodies to do all the initiatives. So it's more a prioritization based on available resources.
I think one risk I see or challenge. So like you said, 50% of families come here for immersion. The other 50%, I mean, at least half was values and community. That's 25%, and the rest might be a mix. But to me, that means you have to sell on two fronts. So the risk is we have to do more than one thing well. We have to both do German well and community and belonging. And so it's activating more of that sense and having people feel happy with two value propositions, not one.
The other thing, I think your plan doesn't address, I don't know, risk. And I don't know that we've thought of this either as a board, is that it's not realistic because of the barrier with learning German to contemplate that we would increase enrollment 5% in each grade. That the increase primarily has to come in the lower grades. And so we need to contemplate what's the best size of our total student body, and how do we get there? Because that will happen over time and not evenly by grade.
Good point. Okay, I would have another question.
Go ahead.
What would the board name as the top priorities for the new executive director in the first year?
Well, I think you've hit on them, enrollment and academic test scores, and whether it's math focusing on math or even math and English. But I agree. I think many families select a school based on its standing and scores in those areas. And I'm not sure if our surveys were specific enough to pick that up versus immersion.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, enrollment is always number one, right? Without students, we don't have a school. We don't have the funding for that. So that is definitely one of the biggest things that we would be looking at. How that is achieved, you created your plan or for the presentation, there are many, many ways to do that. So again, coming down to what can we execute to satisfy that. On the less public side of things, we have 3 big ticket items coming next school year. One is the re-signing of our authorization contract, so we need to renew that. We have our CBA negotiation next school year, and we need to start on the rebonding for 2019 bonds, which is also a lot of work. So unfortunately, those 3 are not anything visible to the community, but a lot of work on the ED side.
Okay.
So just be transparent. Go ahead.
I would just like to expand on what everyone has said and, appreciating how important enrollment and retention and, academic proficiency are. I would love to see continued efforts to really lean into the whole child part of the mission, because I see that as a critical part of retaining students and drawing students to the school. So that'd be my little.
Okay.
Can I have one more?
Absolutely.
And that would be one thing that I'm looking for from the executive director next year is stability. And just a steady hand, a clear vision, and a good communication. Just because, if you go back 6 to 8 years, the school's been through a lot. And there's like you said earlier, there's a lot of things going well. There's a lot of right pieces in place. To get back to another thing you said, there's not a lot of big changes that we feel need to happen, but we need to have that person at the top with the clear vision, lining up with the strategic plan, and getting us in a position to move forward. So I think we're looking for some stability of leadership.
As you can see, we have 7 people here, 9 different opinions. So that is definitely something as an ED. I mean, not that we are completely split or anything. We all want the best for the school, but there will be very much competing priorities, and some of them are pretty needed. So it's really finding the balance will be the major challenge.
Okay. Great. And then I guess my final question would be how the board plans to support the incoming executive director in being successful that first year. I've heard the priorities, but how would you support that position?
Good question. Similar to the last ED, he have put a budget line item in our budget for next year to have an outside contract that can be used to pay for a mentor. And I have at least somebody in mind who already agreed to be that mentor. So we definitely want to make sure that the new ED has all the tools needed and has essentially a bat phone to call if things are getting hairy, to ask for guidance. So we're not expecting the new ED to just toss you in the deep end and swim. We're gonna give you a life vest and a ring.
Add to that, we've had 2 retreats with Dr. Nathan Flansburgh this year, and he uses this metaphor a lot about inviting the school board to the dance floor. We're supposed to stay in this balcony of just watching as everything kind of unfolds, but when the executive director needs it, bringing down whether it's the whole board or pieces of the board, say finance or things like that, to really encourage and help in those instances. Those are also instances then of saying, hey, I'd really like to go over this piece. And one of the things that obviously we have as a board too is the, administrative liaison role. And so being able to sit down and talk each week about how are things going, even on a more generalized term of like, was it a chaotic week or a not chaotic week, things like that. But then also getting into, okay, I understand this. I feel pretty good about it. How can we work on this? Or can I invite, someone to the dance floor to kind of help with those aspects that are more in need of support or, decision making, because ultimately the decision is coming from the executive director and the administrative team. And yet, the board is really working in tandem with that to say, yeah, we approve of that. We think that works with our long-term governing situation as well. But, in what Jens said, it's all about also making sure that we're not just tossing the administration into the deep end, hoping that they can figure it out on their own if it doesn't feel that secure yet.
I would add just that, I know we all have different priorities and perspectives that I don't know how well anybody listening knows all of us, but they're all very much in line with our roles on the board and our work outside of the board and, our own passions and everything. So I won't speak for my fellow directors, but I know I would be happy to have conversations about, the things I've labeled as priorities, and I'm sure other folks would be happy to have conversations with you about, or with the future executive director about those priorities and how we can support that from our end as board directors.
Yeah, I think just as you identified, if you were in this role, even though you've been here, you would take the first 30 days or so to really reestablish connections and relationships with people. I think that's what we as a board would want to do as well, and make sure that we're available, that we're listening, and that we're building a relationship with you or in that role.
Okay. Great.
Any further questions?
I think that was all my questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. This concludes the official part of the interview for the position of the executive director. Thank you, Catherine. And apologies if I omitted your dean of student role.
Oh, great. Yeah. It's really
At this point, I have only
I know,
one
but we
thing
got to go
left
get
to
Jasper first
do.
because he's done at
Special
8
meeting
o'clock.
adjourned.
So, sorry. It's like
Thank
10,
you, everybody online.
10 to 8. So, Forrest, you might have to swing by
Thank
the.
you all for being here tonight. And
Okay.